Hello everyone and welcome back once again to Newegg TV. My name is Paul and today I have an exciting new product from EVGA to unbox for y'all. This is the new EVGA X79 Dark motherboard. Let's start off with a closer look at the retail box. I'm going to go over some of the features of this board, and I'm also going to try to answer some of the questions that might have popped into your head when I said X79. Now X79 is a chipset which was developed for Intel's Enthusiast platform, and the Enthusiast platform for a couple of years now has been LGA 2011, that's socket 2011, the X79 chipset, and it's been primarily used for Intel's, or I guess I should say solely used for Intel's Sli Bridge E processors. Now, Sli Bridge E processors they're kind of beasts. They're incredibly fast. It's the only platform that you can get a 6-core processor or hexa-core processor from Intel, and you can even get the hexa-core hyper-threaded processors, which give you 6 physical cores and 12 logical cores. Now, X79 is still going strong despite it having been out for a little while now. There's a few reasons for that. One is that it is still the platform of choice for enthusiasts. There's no possible way to get as many PCI Express lanes as you can get natively with X79 and with the Sli Bridge E processor with just about any other consumer grade system that you might take a look at. So for that reason, it's been extremely popular for content creation and for high-end dual-use systems that are made for gaming, as well as stuff like video editing or other high-end computing applications. Now, apart from the X79 chipset, this is of course compatible with the Sli Bridge E processors. So that would be the extreme editions like the 3960X and the 3970X. The 3930K has been an incredibly popular chip in that lineup, and you also have the 3820 available right now. And this is a really big segue, or a really big but, a really big but, is what's coming soon, very soon, and I can't tell you exactly the date, but Ivy Bridge E is coming. So Ivy Bridge E is still going to be on socket 2011, it's still going to be compatible with and going to be used the X79 chipset. So Ivy Bridge E, by its name, you might be able to tell, is going to be very similar to Sli Bridge E, but it's going to be based on the Ivy Bridge technology that was out last year for Intel. Now, if you're keeping up with Intel's chips, you might compare that to Haswell. Haswell is the newest consumer-grade chip on the socket 1150 platform, but what you do get with Sli Bridge E and with Ivy Bridge E that you don't get with Haswell is, again, the PCI Express lanes, so the ability to actually have native stuff like 4-way SLI support. And then you also get the ability to have much more memory as well as quad-channel memory. So this board is one of EVGA's first boards on the X79 platform that actually has 8 memory DIMM slots, so that gives you much more memory capacity. And then you also, of course, are going to have Sli Bridge E right now, or at least as of the filming of this video, and then you will very soon, hopefully, have Ivy Bridge E CPUs available as well. And Ivy Bridge E is going to give you a speed boost, and it's also going to have some cool stuff like a much more, or we assume, I should say, a much more aggressive internal memory controller, so you can do better overclock memory and that sort of thing. But apart from that, again, we're taking a closer look at the box. You get a 3-year warranty from EVGA for this product. You also get EVGA's legendary 24/7 support, which is quite nice. I don't know if you ever contacted EVGA for support, but they're great people over there, and they do a great job backing up their products. You get the 90-day step-up program. That's available as well. I've seen that used more so for their video cards and their motherboards, but it's also available here. And then key features are listed over here on the left. So, of course, Intel's Core i7 CPUs. It's going to support Intel's Core i7 Ivy Bridge processors once they're out. LGA 2011, once again, is a socket, so don't go trying to put an LGA 1155 or 1150 or 1156 CPU for that matter on here. You do get backwards compatibility with LGA 1366 coolers. So if you were on Intel's previous Enthusiast platform, LGA 1366, which was a fantastic platform, by the way, but if you've been holding out for a long time and you've got a really favorite LGA 1366 cooler and you're finally going to make the jump, say particularly when Ivy Bridge launches, well, guess what? You can take that cooler and you got a special backplate in here you can swap over. Also, of course, the X79 chipset, 2-way SLI, 3-way SLI, and 4-way SLI compatibility, as well as Crossfire, I should also mention. 8 DIMM quad-channel memory support for up to 2400 megahertz speed, up to 64 gigabytes of memory. 2400 megahertz speed memory was difficult to obtain with Sli Bridge E. You had to have kind of a special chip. But again, with Ivy Bridge, we're expecting to see more support for higher speed memory. PCI Express Gen 3 ready, of course. 5 PCI Express graphics cards expansion. I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys read off the rest of these so I can go ahead and get into the box. So let's do that. Taking a look inside our retail box, we have Oh, we have some documentation, of course. So here's your installation guide. So this is your main motherboard manual tucked inside here. We also have X79 driver disk. This is also going to have some of your software and utilities on it. You also get an EVGA case badge. Why don't I go ahead and pull that out so you guys can take a closer look. Powered by EVGA. There it is. And apart from that, on this driver disk, I would recommend not actually installing the drivers directly off this. It's usually best to download the latest drivers directly from EVGA's website. However, if you're getting your system up and going for the first time, often handy to get the LAN or NIC drivers at least off of that so you can get internet connection to download the rest. Okay, this is your installation manual again, so it's going to have a list of all the parts that are included and kind of a walkthrough of installation. And the only reason I wanted to look in here, aha, important notice. So this is specifically for Ivy Bridge E CPU users. So if we weren't confirmed yet that Ivy Bridge E is coming, well, this should tell you. So please switch to BIOS 3 to use a beta BIOS for Ivy Bridge E CPU usage. This motherboard is releasing prior to the release of Ivy Bridge E, but my guess is that EVGA got some early Ivy Bridge E samples and they've been doing some beta BIOS work, so they've set the third BIOS on this motherboard to be Ivy Bridge compatible right out of the box, which is really handy because if you waited, well, I can't say how long until Ivy Bridge E releases and then you bought this board, it would suck to have to say get a Sandy Bridge E CPU, install that, update the BIOS, and then switch over to Ivy Bridge E. So nice, good call EVGA. I already showed you guys that. Apart from the motherboard manual itself, we also have this, which folds out. And this is another nice addition I like about the EVGA boards that they put in. It's full color, and it gives you some more direct layouts of the motherboard, pointing out to everything what's what. I'm going to be showing you guys what is what on the motherboard itself here in just a second as well, but there's a quick look at that. All right, that's your documentation. And here we also have a pile of accessories. And EVGA, with their video cards as well as with their motherboards, they like to give you a premium product, and they like to let you know when you're unboxing stuff that this is a premium product. And to that end, you get all these little individually bagged. Aha, this is the GPU link. All these individually bagged cables. All right, a cool feature of this that you'll find especially useful if you go with an EVGA video card is you get the GPU link cable. So there's some pinouts on the board you can use to connect your video card directly to it, and you can get some more detailed readings for the card, as well as some more overclocking options, which is pretty cool. You get an assortment of SLI bridges in here. Let me see if I can pair them all up with each other. There's an SLI bridge, there's an SLI bridge. Okay, I think that's it. All right, so here's a three-way SLI bridge. I often will also use these for two-way SLI configurations because the rigid PCB helps provide a little bit more support for that, and it doesn't matter that you're plugging in both. You only need one, but plugging in both still works. It's got the EVGA and NVIDIA SLI logos on there as well, and this is going to be dual slot spacing for the cards when you plug it in. You also get a flexible, also black SLI bridge, so this will work for a variety of different spacings depending on where you want to position your video cards. Again, also black, so it's going to match with the color scheme with the NVIDIA SLI and EVGA logos. And then lastly, you do get a four-way SLI bridge. I'm not going to bother opening this one because it's going to look just like that one, except it's going to be one slot longer, isn't it? Okay. What else do we have here? Let's talk about input-output shield. That's right here. There's your I/O shield. EVGA, it's all black on the back, again, keeping with a nice clean look for the build overall, and it's got the squishy electromagnetic shielding on the back, which I'm also quite fond of because it's much less likely to cut you. All right, this is a Probit cable. I'm going to open all these. All right, so this simply a little header on the board leads to a bunch of probe connection points, so you can connect up your multimeter and get some detailed voltage readings. Also, in this little baggie, I already mentioned the 1366 CPU cooler capability. Now, Socket 2011 has a integrated universal backplate, which is really an awesome one. But again, if you do have an older Socket 1366 CPU cooler and you want to move that over to this board, simply swap out the integrated backplate with that one, and that will give you the capability to do that. What do we have here? I have no idea. This is like a Christmas of opening up motherboard peripherals. Okay, serial ATA cables. A couple rounded serial ATA cables. These are going to be SATA Rev 1, 2, or 3 compatible. They have little black clips on the end that'll help them keep securely connected to whatever serial ATA plug you plug them into. 2 of those right there. This is a Molex to SATA adapter. I find that whenever I most want one of these, I can't find one. So this is a Molex plug to 3 serial ATA connection plugs. So hey, that's nice to have. Very handy if you're doing a build. And if you need to connect up some serial ATA ports and all you've got is a Molex. All right. Here is a USB 2.0 rear panel bracket. A couple internal header plugs for that. Here is USB 3.0 rear panel PCI bracket right there for 2 USB 3.0 plugs and the 20-pin internal USB 3.0 connector. I swear, guys, I'm almost to the motherboard. I can almost taste it. All right, another adapter here. Wow, they're really making sure you got plenty of serial ATA connectivity here. So again, Molex to a couple serial ATA plugs. So it'll break out right there. A couple more serial ATA data cables right there. Again, both straight plugs on both ends. These are the flat cables, but they are all black once again. No clips on this one, but again, don't worry. These will work with your fast SATA Rev 3 SSDs, so those will be SATA 1.5 gigabits, 3 gigabits, and 6 gigabits per second capable. I think that's the first time I've ever described those SATA connections like that. Lastly, you get an EVGA X79 Dark. This is actually a cover for the I/O. This is an internal cover, so if you have a case with a side window or something like that, pop that on. It'll give it a much cleaner look, and I'll show you how that looks once I get the motherboard out, too. Speaking of motherboard, here it is. This is the X79 Dark in all of its glory now. I've got the little cover right here, but they've also put on some stickers here, which I find to be quite helpful, especially for first-timers. So a little bit of assistance here about your CPU installation. This is LGA 2011. It's got 2 arms on the little socket right there, so this will help you walk you through that. They've also put stickers over your DIMM slots here, which are numbered and actually tells you which DIMM slots that you should populate first, so also useful. But I'm going to peel these off so you guys can get a better idea of what the board looks like without all that stuff on there. So apart from our little smudge there, that's just from on the CPU socket cover, which will come off anyway, the board, of course, is primarily black and red in color. And I learned this from EVGA video cards, but EVGA likes to have tiny little pieces of plastic, which are protective, but which are really difficult to miss. So if you happen to buy this motherboard and you happen to have watched this video, check this out. There's some protective plastic on the E that's on your X79 chipset heatsink right there. So I'm not going to peel all 3 of those off right now, but there you have it. Okay, so black and red is the color scheme we're working with here. Some red accents there on the chipset heatsink, as well as up here on the heatsink for the VRMs, and then also with this X79 Dark cover, which you can simply put on right there, and it would be held in place by a couple of your standoffs. You get a really nice, clean-looking black and red color scheme for the board overall, and excellent job by EVGA, since I'm guessing folks who are interested in this particular board are going to be looking for a high-end system, but chances are you're going to want a system that also looks pretty nice if you're going to want to show it off to your friends and whatnot. I did want to show you guys the back of the board as well, so you get a better look at the kind of matte black color of the PCB. It is a 12-layer PCB as well. You can see the universal backplate there for the socket 2011. And then you also have Phillips head screws, which are keeping your heat sinks on, such as up here. And that makes it a bit easier to remove them if you ever need to in the future, if you were going to, say, choose this board for a water cooling build or something along those lines. We also have 6 4-pin fan headers on the board, so I'm going to point those out to you guys. Starting in the upper right over here, that's your CPU fan header, actually right up there by the debug LED. You also have another 4-pin fan header, which is down here to the lower left of your DIMM slots. And then you have 4 more along the lower edge of the board. And again, all these are 4-pin, so 1, 2, 3, and 4 more along the bottom edge right there, rounding out to your 6 fan headers. And now we're going to talk about the board super close up, and I'm going to show you guys as many of the details as I possibly can. Okay. Which is good. We don't have a time limit going right now. All right, so starting in the lower right, we got the fan header I already pointed out. Let me get my pointer pen. All right, there's the fan header I already pointed out. Next to that, you have your BIOS selection switch. This board has 3 BIOSes, or BIOSes, or UEFIs, whatever you want to call them. But 3-position switch right there will let you choose between those. And that, to me, goes more towards being an overclocking and enthusiast board than, say, just a backup BIOS. You actually have 3. You can physically choose which one is which. So if you're doing this in a say an open test bed or something like that, you can set up a few different overclocking options and easily jump back and forth between those. Another system fan header right there. Here are your front panel connectors, which are lightly color-coded so you can tell which one is which. Here's a USB 3.0 port right there. 20-pin connector. Now, since X79 doesn't have any native USB 3, all of the USB 3 on this board is going to be controlled by add-on chips. Those are provided by ASMedia, and if you want to know specifically, it's the ASM1042 chip that's used for all the USB 3 on the board. Next to that, you have another system fan header. Next to that, you have a couple more USB 2.0 headers there and there. Each of those will control 2 USB 2.0 ports, and they got the little covers if you want to keep them covered up and you're not using them. Another fan header, you actually have a surface-mounted speaker right there, so you'll be able to hear your post beeps and whatnot. This is an ATX 6-pin power connection point right there. Oops, which I've barely dropped. All right, so you can see that. So a Pci Express Power connector, and that is for supplemental power for your Pci Express lanes. Basically, it's not going to be necessary to plug that in all configurations. It will depend highly on what type of graphics card and add-on card solution you're going with. But I would say if you're going with 2-way or particularly 3-way or higher SLI or Crossfire X, definitely plug in that power connection to make sure that your cards are going to run nice and stable the whole time. You also have, of course, a front panel audio connector right there, SPDIF, which is located above that. You also have the EVGA link right there if you happen to be an owner of one of those. Those are those little pinouts. And if you're not familiar with that, it's actually a little analog controller unit or readout unit that you can connect, and it will give you an analog readout, kind of like a car, like a speedometer on a car or something like that, for the frequency that your CPU is running at, which is mostly for looks, in my personal opinion. But if you got one of those, you do have the ability to plug it in right there. Let's talk about PCI Express, since that's a big selling point for this platform. Sandy Bridge E and Ivy Bridge E are both going to have 40 PCI Express lanes, and that is an insane amount of bandwidth, and you're going to get much better bandwidth and performance than you would even say with a Z87 or Z77 motherboard that uses a PLX bridge. That is simply because they're native, and if you need tons of I/O, if you want to, say, set up a 2-card Crossfire configuration, you want to add on sound card, you want to add on RAID controller card, something like that, where you're really going to be taxing the I/O on this I should say socket 2011, and Sandy Bridge E or Ivy Bridge E is going to be the way to go. Now for your 40 lanes, you have distribution that's sort of available in different configurations, but you got full-length X16 slots, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of those. You also got another X4 slot right there. These top 2 slots here are tied together, so the top one's going to run at X16, or these will both run at X8 if you're populating both of them. This one here, the 3rd slot, will also run at X16, or it will run at X8 if you're populating both of these. And then finally you have this one down here, which is going to run at X8, which is totally sufficient for SLI or Crossfire X configurations. But then you also have X4 and X4 availability right here, which is probably the most you'll need for, say, an add-on RAID card or something along those lines. So that gives you plenty of PCI Express bandwidth. So the thing I like about that is you can have, say, these 2 slots populated, and if you have dual slot cards, that will give you an extra slot in between for some airflow. That would be 32 lanes used up, and then you'd have another 4 and 4 available right there for add-on cards. But again, lots of different configurations available here, whether you're talking about 3 slot cards, whether you want extra spacing, or whether you're going 2 slot cards, fully populating all these with a 4-way SLI or Crossfire configuration. That is all available to you, and it's pretty awesome. I've actually managed to work with some of those configurations before in the past. And when you get it all installed, it gives you a great feeling of satisfaction. Steve's nodding at me. He's like, yeah, I know that feeling. Right? Okay. Moving on from that, I know this video is running long, but I'm trying to give this board a lot of coverage because it's a pretty cool board. To the right of that, we have our EVGA logoed X79 chipset heatsink. It's got an EVGA sort of a chrome logo up here at the top of it, and then of course the big red logo there as well. X79 chipset is controlling quite a bit of stuff on the board, but most specifically when it comes to chipsets and motherboards and consumer use, the serial ATA is a point that a lot of folks are interested in. Now, this being the X79 chipset, you don't get quite as much SATA Rev 3 natively as you would with, say, a Haswell and an X78 or Z87, sorry, I'm getting dyslexic, Z87 chipset, but thankfully we have an add-on chip as well. The add-on chip is from Marvell, and not sure specifically which one it is because it's not listed in the manual, but you get 4 add-on SATA Rev 3 6 gigabits per second ports right there, the leftmost 4. that are available. And then also for these 6 right here, the 4 in the middle are going to be SATA Rev 2, so those will still be 3 gigabits per second. So I recommend if you have optical drives or mechanical hard drives, plug them in right there, and that'll be plenty of bandwidth for those. And then these are going to be your fastest ports, these 2 right here. These are the natively controlled SATA Rev 3 6 gigabits per second ports. Let me set this upright once again, and we'll continue up the side of the board. All right, so above your serial ATA, you have these dip switches right here. These are a useful feature, particularly if you're setting up a test bed. These are basically on-off switches for the PCI Express lanes. So once you have them all populated, and these are controlling the full-length X16 slots, let's say you have a water cooling loop, for example, set up, and you want to test with one card, or you're doing some troubleshooting or something along those lines, and you can't really remove the cards. You simply switch off the lane, and it switches off the card. Also, you have LEDs next to that, and you can use those to determine which of those are turned on and off. So it gives you some nice flexibility there, particularly if you're doing testing of multiple video card configurations. Also above that, you have this port, which you might not even recognize just looking at it, but look, it's a 90-degree angled 24-pin motherboard power connector. So this is going to help keep your cable management to be a bit more tidy by angling it out towards the side of the board, which is typically where your cable management holes would be located. Moving up the side of the board, we have the GPU link functionality, which is located right there. You can use the included cables to connect up to a compatible EVGA GPU and get some more control over that. Here's your CPU fan header. Above that is a debug LED, which is fantastic for doing some troubleshooting when you're initially getting your system up and running. If you're having any hangs or problems getting through posts, reference the codes listed here. And then once you're into the operating system, this will read your CPU temperature. You get a clear CMOS button right there. There's another one also located on the I/O at the back. You also get surface mounted reset and power buttons right there. Again, super handy to have if you're doing an outside of the box build, or if you're like me and suddenly your case power button stops working, and so you take off the side panel of your case and you just reach in there and press power. That's probably a very rare circumstance to use the button, but it did happen to me recently. At the very top here, you can see these little pinouts. That's where you use that little breakout cable I showed you from the accessories, and that's for voltage read points. And then, of course, the main event wrench is right here. So you got your quad channel memory, first of all. So again, quad channel memory, you're going to want to buy your memory in, I would say matched sets of 4 is going to be your best bet, because the JDEC values that are stored in the memory are going to be better suited for a quad channel configuration than, say, buying 2 dual channel kits. But apart from that, at least with your paired memory, you would definitely want to make sure you're using the exact same types of DIMMs. But you do get support for up to 64 gigabytes of memory here if you were to populate all of these with 8 gig DIMMs. You have memory overclock speeds, at least at the time of this filming of this video, up to 2400 speed. Again, with Sandy Bridge E chips, you're going to have a tough time hitting that speed, but we're told with Ivy Bridge E it will be much easier to hit that and even possibly go beyond it. Apart from that, DDR3 DIMMs, quad channel, 1.65 volt supported, as well as 1.5 volt as well. Socket is right here at the center. Again, that's socket 2011 for your Sandy Bridge E, also Ivy Bridge E compatible. And then at the very top up here, you got 2 supplemental CPU power connectors. So both 8-pin. The one on the right there is your primary, so always going to want to make sure that's plugged in. This one is your secondary. You can run the board without that being plugged in, but particularly if you're going to be overclocking, it's recommended to plug that in to give the power, all the power needed to the power delivery units right here. Speaking of power delivery, it's a 12-stage operation they have running right here. And again, nice beefy heatsink to keep all those components cooled down so you have more stability with your overclocks. And it looks like there's not much going on to the left of these DIMM slots, which means we can finish off with the I/O back here. All right. For your I/O, first off, you got Bluetooth integrated right there. 4 USB 2.0 ports there and there. Wait, 6. 2, 4, 6. Yes, I'm counting today. There's your external clear CMOS button, which is handy to have. This is your EVBot connector, so if you do purchase the EVBot external monitor, you can plug it in right there and get use of it. A couple eSATA ports right here as well. Intel Gigabit NICs, which are very nice. 4 more USB 3.0 ports, again, controlled by ASMedia. Finally, your optical Toslink audio out, as well as all of your analog connections for microphone in and analog out. And that's for your audio, which is controlled by a Realtek ALC898 7.1 channel audio controller chip. And that is going to wrap it up for this quick did I say quick? Sorry. That's going to wrap it up for this overview of the new EVGA X79 Dark motherboard featuring the X79 chipset and socket 2011 socket, which currently supports Intel's Sandy Bridge E enthusiast grade processors and also will support Intel's Ivy Bridge E processors once they are released. I should also mention that this is an E-ATX motherboard. That's probably something I should have said right at the beginning, but right at the end, that's just as well, right? Thanks for watching this video though, guys. If you found it useful, entertaining, or just really long, go ahead and click that like button right down there, and we'll see you next time on Newegg TV.